What if I were to tell you that, in his documented readings from 1935 to 1944, Edgar Cayce pinpointed 3 particular nations that would be pivotal in humanity's ultimate spiritual challenge? These were not mere vague forecasts. Instead, they consisted of detailed insights provided while Cayce was in his well-known trance state at his Virginia Beach office, observed by stenographers and archived in the Association for Research and Enlightenment. In the upcoming 20 minutes, you will find out which 3 countries Cayce mentioned in readings 397615, 1152, 11, and 26286, along with his reasoning behind why their actions would influence whether humanity transitions to a new level of awareness or undergoes what he described as the Great Purification. You will also learn about the specific signs Cayce indicated would precede this ultimate test, some of which are already occurring right now. Feel free to comment if you've ever had a prophetic dream or an unexplained spiritual encounter, as what you are about to discover regarding Cayce's psychic abilities will provide you with an entirely new perspective on consciousness and prophecy. Before we explore these astonishing revelations, it's essential to grasp how Edgar Cayce became the most extensively documented psychic in American history. For over 43 years, from 1901 until his passing in 1945, even the most skeptical doctors and scientists were unable to rationalize his abilities. Cayce provided readings while in a self-induced trance, which he characterized as stepping aside to let universal consciousness communicate through him. The procedure was consistently the same. He would recline on a couch in his office, loosen his tie and shoelaces, and rest his hands over his solar plexus. Within moments, his breathing would slow, and his voice would transform entirely. What followed challenged everything that science knew about human consciousness. He would diagnose illnesses in individuals he had never encountered, located hundreds of miles away, prescribe treatments using unfamiliar medical terminology, and disclose details about past lives with such historical precision that it left researchers astounded. What makes Cayce's predictions regarding these 3 nations particularly chilling is quite significant. In reading 1152-11, delivered in August 1939, just weeks before the onset of World War II, Cayce cautioned that the same spiritual dynamics fueling global discord were gearing up for an even greater upheaval. He stated that humanity would encounter a final challenge that would dwarf the world wars, rendering them mere squabbles in comparison. Just wait until you discover what Cayce disclosed about when this challenge would occur. In reading 262-86, he mentioned that the preparatory stage would extend for roughly 80 years, following the conclusion of the Second World War, which brings us right to the point in time he anticipated. However, this is the aspect that may astonish you. Cayce expressed that this examination wouldn't mainly focus on military or economic factors, but rather on spiritual ones, and it would assess humanity's ability to transcend the destructive cycle that has affected us for thousands of years. The initial nation Cayce pinpointed as vital for humanity's ultimate challenge was Russia. Yet this was not the Russia that many Americans assume they understand. In his reading 39-76-29 provided in 1944, Cayce made a forecast that at that moment appeared to be implausible. He asserted that Russia would transform into a source of hope for the world, driven not by its governmental structure, but by a spiritual revival arising from its citizens. It's important to note that this was in 1944, during Stalin's regime, when religious oppression was widespread, and the Soviet Union functioned as a reluctant partner for the United States against Nazi Germany. The notion that Russia might emerge as a symbol of spiritual hope appeared ludicrous to those present during the discussion. Gladys Davis, Cayce's stenographer, recorded that a number of individuals in attendance actually chuckled at his statement. Yet Cayce delved further in his reading 9-44-1. He claimed that Russia would play a vital role in humanity's ultimate challenge by fostering what he referred to as the awakening of Christ consciousness among its citizens. He envisioned a spiritual upheaval in Russia that would radiate across the globe, although it would first have to endure significant trials and a process of purification. This is where it becomes particularly fascinating. According to reading 3976-15, Cayce indicated that Russia's metamorphosis would commence when its populace re-established their connection to the spiritual values that predated the divisions imposed by political ideologies. He notably pointed out that this awakening would arise through hardship. Yet he believed the Russian people possessed the spiritual resilience needed to emerge as guides for humanity as a whole. However, there's an even more detailed insight that Cayce shared regarding Russia's role. In his reading 1739-10, he mentioned that Russia would emerge as the origin of a new perspective on prayer and meditation, essential for humanity's preparedness for the ultimate test. He elaborated on the development of what he termed group consciousness among Russians, which would enable them to tap into higher spiritual realms more readily than other nations. The second nation Cayce highlighted may surprise you even further. In reading 1152-11, he indicated that China would serve as the spiritual bedrock for the evolution of humanity, though this was not related to China's political clout or economic dominance. Cayce was discussing concepts that were far more significant and profound. He suggested that China possessed what he referred to as the dormant wisdom of the ages. In his exploration of 2067-1, he indicated that China served as a guardian of spiritual insights that had been safeguarded over millennia of civilization, insights crucial for humanity as it faced its ultimate challenge. He emphasized that Chinese spiritual traditions, especially meditation and energy development, held the keys to expanding consciousness, insights that Western thinkers were just starting to grasp. Yet this is where the true eeriness lies. In reading 5411, Cayce foresaw a significant spiritual awakening in China occurring alongside a global crisis. He indicated that this awakening would be expressed as the Chinese populace reconnected with and imparted their ancient insights regarding consciousness, energy, and the relationship between mind and matter. Cayce was remarkably precise in his predictions. He stated that China's role in humanity's ultimate trial would involve educating the world about what he referred to as the science of the soul. In reading 281-63, he elaborated on the rise of Chinese masters who would showcase abilities that would compel Western science to fundamentally rethink its conception of human capabilities. What is truly astonishing is that Cayce foresaw this occurrence through what he referred to as the fusion of Eastern wisdom and Western technology. In his reading 1598-1, delivered in 1938, he envisioned China as a conduit connecting ancient spiritual insights with contemporary scientific knowledge, leading to innovative methods for healing, consciousness expansion, and human development, all of which would be vital for the survival of humankind. The third nation that Cayce pinpointed as pivotal in humanity's ultimate test is one that most would not anticipate. In his reading 3976-15, he asserted that Egypt would assume a significant role not due to its present-day political climate, but because of the secrets buried in its sands. Cayce contended that Egypt harbors tangible evidence of humanity's genuine spiritual past, which would be uncovered during the time of the final test. This is the point at which Cayce's readings become truly intriguing. In reading 378-16, He mentioned that under the Sphinx and within yet-to-be-found chambers close to the Great Pyramid, there are historical documents that demonstrate humanity's journey through various cycles of spiritual growth and devastation. He referred to these as the Hall of Records, asserting that they hold evidence of advanced civilizations that thrived long before our historical records began. What makes this particularly significant for today's world is Cayce's prediction, in reading 5748-6, that these documents would be uncovered and made known to humanity at a time when there would be a need for proof that consciousness can move beyond physical constraints. He stated that this insight would emerge during the ultimate assessment as a means to assist humanity in rediscovering its authentic spiritual essence and capabilities. Cayce provided extensive details regarding the content of these records. In his review of 2012 Chapter 1, he mentioned that they encompass knowledge about healing technologies that utilize sound and light, techniques for enhancing psychic abilities, and most crucially, guidelines for what he termed the conscious evolution of the soul. He foresaw that the disclosure of this information would transform every area of human understanding. However, there's an astounding connection between all three nations that will truly astonish you. In the course of reading 16023, Cayce indicated that Russia, China, and Egypt each possess a vital component of a spiritual enigma that humanity must unravel to succeed in its ultimate challenge. According to Cayce, Russia possesses the key to collective consciousness and the power of prayer. China controls the key to the growth of individual consciousness and the mastery of energy. Meanwhile, Egypt provides the tangible evidence that humanity is capable of spiritual evolution. In reading 26284, Cayce mentioned that these three elements would unite during a period of global crisis, compelling humanity to decide between spiritual advancement and self-destruction. He referred to this as the significant crossroads and claimed it would represent the most crucial moment in the history of humankind. This is where Cayce's forecasts become remarkably pertinent to our current global situation. In his reading 3976-26, he detailed certain indicators that would manifest prior to humanity's ultimate challenge commencing. The initial sign he noted was what he termed the awakening of the populace to spiritual truth. Take a moment to observe the events unfolding today. Meditation applications boast millions of users. Spiritual literature frequently appears at the top of bestseller charts, and a growing number of Americans are delving into alternative methods of healing and expanding their consciousness. The second indicator Cayce highlighted in reading 1152-8 was the disintegration of outdated systems that no longer facilitate humanity's development. Reflect on the institutions, belief systems, and power dynamics currently facing scrutiny and opposition. Cayce asserted that this disintegration is essential for paving the way for the new spiritual insights that are set to arise. The third indicator, arguably the most important, is outlined in reading 1598-1. Cayce indicated that prior to the ultimate challenge, there would be a significant awakening within individual consciousness, leading to an increase in prophetic dreams, psychic events, and spiritual epiphanies among people. The number of Americans sharing such experiences has risen significantly in recent years. However, Cayce's insights on the final test are both alarming and promising. In his reading 39-76-15, he characterized it as a decision that humanity must face together. He emphasized that this choice wouldn't be forced upon us externally, but would arise from the collective awareness of every individual on the planet. Furthermore, in reading 26285, Cayce clarified that this test would manifest as a worldwide crisis resolvable only through spiritual pathways. He asserted that conventional methods, such as military action, economic frameworks, and political interventions, would ultimately fall short. The sole path forward lies in humanity's ability to acknowledge its spiritual interconnectedness and intentionally opt for collaboration instead of rivalry, compassion instead of fear, and altruism instead of self-interest. This is where the contributions of Russia, China, and Egypt become vital. According to Cayce in reading 1739-12, Russia would set a precedent, demonstrating how collective awareness and prayer can produce seemingly unachievable solutions. China would play a significant role in educating the world on cultivating the personal spiritual strength needed to uphold heightened consciousness and resilience. Egypt, on the other hand, would offer historical evidence that humanity has previously encountered and successfully overcome similar challenges. In reading 5748-2, Cayce elaborated on how success in the final test would manifest. He described a development he termed cosmic consciousness, which would enable individuals to engage in telepathic communication, heal through thought and intention, and tap into the Akashic records without needing to enter altered states of consciousness. However, Cayce also cautioned about the consequences of failing this test. In reading 16-21, he indicated that such failure would lead to an event he referred to as the Great Cleansing, characterized by significant earth transformations and social unrest that would persist until humanity grasped the necessary lessons for spiritual evolution. Nonetheless, Cayce emphasized that this outcome was not inevitable. In reading 262-7-8, he highlighted that the results are solely determined by the choices we make in the present moment. He noted that every individual who opts for spiritual development instead of material wealth, embraces collaboration rather than rivalry, and chooses love over fear, plays a role in enhancing humanity's opportunity to succeed in the test. Here's what Cayce suggested you can do personally to assist humanity in preparing for and succeeding in this ultimate challenge. In reading 281-41, he described what he termed the routine practice of spiritual awakening. This consists of beginning each day with meditation or prayer, engaging in every interaction with the aim of benefiting others' highest good, and concluding each day by reflecting on how your thoughts and actions either advanced or hindered the spiritual progress of the world. Cayce highlighted in reading 1947-3 the significance of exploring and implementing spiritual principles in tangible ways. He mentioned that those who would provide the greatest support during humanity's ultimate challenge would be individuals who have mastered healing via spiritual methods, can connect with higher consciousness, and maintain tranquility within themselves despite external pressures. In reading 378-44, Cayce offered specific advice on preparing for the insights that would emerge from Egypt. He recommended that individuals delve into ancient wisdom traditions, engage in meditation practices that facilitate access to universal consciousness, and enhance their intuitive skills with daily spiritual exercises. Most importantly, Cayce emphasized in reading 976-28 that the final challenge is not a future event for humanity, but rather something being shaped by humanity's collective consciousness in the present moment. Every thought about love, every act of kindness, and every instance of prioritizing spiritual growth over material wealth contributes to shaping the outcome. The specific part that the United States will play in this ultimate challenge was addressed by Cayce in reading 3976-19. He mentioned that America would act as a testing site where the spiritual values emerging from Russia, China, and Egypt would either find fertile ground and thrive, or be dismissed in favor of ongoing materialism and division. Cayce forecasted that America's reaction to these spiritual insights would significantly influence how swiftly and seamlessly humanity could navigate its final examination. He noted that if Americans welcomed this spiritual awakening and integrated these elevated consciousness principles into their everyday lives, it would generate a momentum benefiting the entire world's evolution. This is the reason why grasping Cayce's insights regarding Russia, China, and Egypt is essential for Americans who are focused on spiritual development and expanding consciousness. We are not merely witnesses to this unfolding, but rather engaged participants in one of humanity's pivotal moments. It's important to keep in mind that Edgar Cayce delivered these readings while connected to what he termed universal consciousness, the same source accessed by mystics and spiritual leaders throughout time. His impressive record of precise predictions, well-documented healing miracles, and thorough past life readings that have been validated through historical investigation provide ample justification for taking these prophecies seriously. The final test that Cayce spoke of is not something that will happen in the far-off future. Based on his timeline derived from readings conducted in the 1940s, we are currently in a phase of preparation. The global spiritual awakening, the disintegration of outdated systems, and the rising number of individuals experiencing psychic phenomena are all indicators that Cayce claimed would signal humanity's pivotal moment of choice. Your part in this cosmic narrative is not set in stone. Cayce consistently highlighted that free will is the primary driving force behind spiritual growth. Every day, through your thoughts, words, and deeds, you are casting your vote on whether humanity succeeds or fails its ultimate challenge. The key question is not about whether you are spiritual enough or possess sufficient psychic abilities to make an impact. The real question is if you are prepared to prioritize love instead of fear, service over self-interest, and spiritual advancement rather than material wealth in your everyday existence. This is the heritage that Edgar Cayce has bequeathed to us. Not only predictions about what lies ahead, but also actionable advice for transforming into individuals capable of assisting humanity in reaching a higher state of awareness. The challenge is present. The decision lies in our hands, and now is the moment for us to prepare. The challenge is present, and now is the moment for preparation.